There is a quiet doorway at the edge of thought, one that opens not with keys or hinges, but with a willingness to step into the unlit spaces. Hey, the air is still, yet it carries a scent of distant rain and the faint warmth of something ancient. Mystery stands there, not as a shadow waiting to be dispelled, but as a companion who has walked beside humankind since the first fire was lit. In every age, people have looked beyond the firelight and seen shapes they could not name, lights they could not explain, and silences that felt alive. These are not threats, but invitations, asking only that we linger. We drift forward through the corridors of time, each step echoing softly against the worn stone of forgotten halls. The walls are lined not with answers, but with questions, ones written in the dust of deserts, etched into ice, and whispered across the sea. The oceans hold their own slow pulse, the surface rising and falling like the breath of the earth itself. Above them, clouds stretch in wonder, carrying shadows over mountains, forests, and plains where ancient footsteps once pressed into soil now hidden beneath centuries. This is not a race toward solutions, but a slow walk in the company of wonder. In the quiet between heartbeats, the sky seems to lean closer, its stars pulsing like distant beacons in the dark. The world becomes both vast and intimate, a place where every unanswered question is a warm blanket for the mind. The journey begins not with certainty, but with the comfort of not needing it, of standing at the threshold and letting the unknown take your hand. In the far reaches of the Sahara, where the horizon blurs into a shimmering mirage and the sun feels eternal, a strange rhythm hides beneath the silence. For decades, radios tuned to certain frequencies have caught it, a pulse, steady as a heartbeat, repeating at intervals so exact it feels mechanical, yet so unclaimed it feels alive. The source has never been found. Scientists have brought instruments, maps, and theories, but the desert swallows their certainty the way it swallows footprints. The dunes here are restless. Winds sculpt them by day, and by night they move like slow tides of sand, uncovering fragments of forgotten roads and half-buried stones worn smooth by centuries of passing hands and feet. Sometimes the shifting sands reveal blackened stumps, the remains of petrified forests that stood here long before the Sahara was a desert. And deeper still, at rare times, pieces of walls or carved pillars emerge, their patterns older than the languages we know, only to be hidden again as if the earth reclaims what it isn't ready to share. Listening to the pulse in this place is like listening to the desert breathe. Between the beats there is a stillness so deep it feels infinite, as though the land itself is waiting, watching, remembering. The sound carries no message that we can decode, yet it draws people back year after year, each hoping to hear not just a signal, but the meaning within its spaces. Here, in the slow turning of sand and time, the line between sound and silence fades, and the mystery becomes not just what we hear, but why it is speaking at all. Winter in the Canadian North is a silence made of snow, a silence that falls thick over the land, muffling even the sound of breath. In 1930, that silence deepened into something stranger along the frozen shores of Lake Anjikuni. There, an Inuit village that had stood for generations simply ceased to be. Hunters passing through found the fires still burning low, casting small flickers against the walls of empty homes. Meals sat half-eaten on wooden tables, cups of tea cooling in the cold air. Outside, sled dogs lay frozen in place, still tethered, their eyes clouded by ice. The snow was fresh, its powder lying smooth except for the faintest trace of footprints that wandered toward the edge of the lake and then disappeared, not into thin air, but into the very whiteness itself, swallowed without destination. The air carried no cry for help, no echo of struggle. Only the wind moved, curling through the silent alleys between snow-covered huts, brushing past the still open doors. In this wilderness, absence feels heavier than presence. The lake lies under a crust of ice, its surface reflecting the pale light of a distant sun. The surrounding forest holds its breath, every branch outlined in frost, as if the land itself is guarding a secret. What happened that night has no answer in the records of police or hunters. The story remains, passed quietly from one voice to another, the words drifting like snowflakes, unique, delicate, and melting as soon as they touch the warmth of certainty. And so Lake Anjikuni keeps its secret beneath layers of snow and time, each winter erasing the path to truth. Night comes gently to the Hestalen Valley, settling like a dark quilt over the folds of snow and pine. The air here is sharp and clean, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from distant farmhouses. Beneath boots, the snow compresses with a soft, deliberate crunch, a sound that seems to echo longer than it should in the stillness. Above, the sky is a deep, velvety black, scattered with stars that burn steady and cold. And then, without warning, something else appears among them. A pale orb drifts into view, brighter than any star, moving slowly across the valley. It hovers for a moment, as though considering its next path, before sliding forward with unhurried grace. Sometimes it splits in two, each half gliding in its own direction before rejoining, seamless as a drop of water. Other times, it pulses faintly, its light swelling and fading like the breath of a sleeping thing. Cameras have caught these lights, their glow shimmering against the snowy hills, yet the recordings explain nothing. Scientists have set up instruments, taken measurements, charted appearances, but the valley offers no secrets. The lights come when they choose, ignoring schedules, ignoring observers. The locals speak of them with a kind of calm acceptance, as if the valley and the lights have always shared the same quiet heartbeat. Standing in the frozen night, the cold biting through layers of cloth, it is hard not to feel that these drifting orbs are alive in some way, watching, perhaps listening. They make no sound, yet their presence fills the air, a hum too deep for ears but felt in the chest. And when they fade, slipping back into the vast dark, the valley feels larger, emptier, and somehow more awake than before. The Valley of the Kings lies under a sun that feels eternal, its light bleaching the cliffs and scattering heat into every crevice. Beneath that scorched surface, the air changes. The torchlight flickers against walls painted with the faces of gods and pharaohs, their eyes following from centuries away. The corridors run deep, each step carrying the sound of boots against stone into the quiet ahead. Hey, silence is not the absence of sound. It is a living thing, thick and close, pressing in like deep water. It was in such a passage, within a sealed tomb untouched for millennia, that the archaeologists first noticed it. A faint, steady rhythm, barely louder than the whisper of a heartbeat. At first it seemed like wind through hidden cracks, but their instrument detected no movement of air. The sound was too regular, too deliberate, a long inhale, a pause, a slow exhale, repeating without variation. Dust motes drifted lazily in the golden beams of the torches, moving as though time had slowed. The air smelled faintly of ancient resin and stone, the scent of a burial untouched. They pressed ears to the cool limestone, half expecting to feel the vibration of the sound. But the walls were still, as unyielding as the desert cliffs above. Some suggested it was a shifting of stone, the earth settling after thousands of years. Others felt it was something older, the tomb itself, holding on to the memory of the one it sheltered. In that underground chamber, the living stood surrounded by the dead, and yet it was the air, not the silence, that seemed to breathe. And as they left, climbing back into the sunlight, the sound faded, not as though it had stopped, but as though it had simply decided not to follow. Far out on open water, where the horizon wavers in a haze of light and mist, sailors speak of a place that should not be there. It begins as a shadow in the fog, a darker shape against the endless silver of the sea. As the wind shifts, it takes form, a rise of green hills, the glint of waterfalls tumbling into hidden bays, the dark line of trees swaying in some unseen breeze. The air smells faintly of earth and flowers, so different from the salted emptiness around it. Those who have seen it say it stays something in the chest, the quiet pull of land after too many days of water. Maps do not hold its shape, and no coordinates bring you to it twice. Yet the descriptions are nearly the same across centuries, lush slopes rising gently from the sea, birds wheeling above the tree line, and beaches pale as bone. When a ship turns toward it, sails full and eyes fixed on the green, the island begins to blur. The edges soften, colors fade, and the mist grows thicker, until there is only open water once more. The sea lies calm where a moment before there had been land, the only sound the lap of waves against the hull. In quiet moments at sea, drifting on slow currents with nothing but the horizon ahead, the thought of such a place lingers. Perhaps it is a trick of light, a mirage born of longing. Or perhaps it is an island that lived between the spaces of the world, touching ours only briefly before slipping away again. Out here, with the sky and sea blending into one, it is hard to tell the difference between what the eyes see and what the heart wants to believe. In the center of a small mountain village, where cobblestone streets win between steep roof houses, a tower rises above the square. Its stone is weathered, softened by centuries of rain and frost, and from its peak a clock face looks down over the valley. At first glance, it is like any other, the hands turning steadily, the tick marking each second. But watch long enough and the truth becomes clear. The hands are moving backward. No one remembers when it began. Old records suggest it has always been this way, even when the mechanism was new. The gears inside are heavy and intricate, carved from metals whose source no one can name. Craftsmen have climbed the tower and studied the movement, attempting to change its direction, yet every effort fails. Even if stopped entirely, once released, the hands resume their slow reverse, each second unwinding into the one before it. In the square below, life continues without urgency. Locals say time flows differently here, that days stretch longer, that memory feels sharper, as if the past is never truly gone. The air carries a quiet that is not quite stillness, more like the soft turning of a page in reverse. When the bell tolls, its sound is low and drawn out, as though it has traveled a great distance to reach the air. Standing beneath it, watching the backward tick, there is a strange sensation, as if moments are not passing but returning. Faces from long ago feel closer, conversations once forgotten rise to the surface, and the present feels more like a place you have already been. In this village, the clock does not count time forward, it unspools it, thread by thread, returning each second to wherever it first began. Beneath the restless dunes of North Africa, where the wind reshapes the land with every passing hour, a discovery was made that felt like a breath from another age. Archaeologists, following the faint outline of half-buried stone, uncovered the entrance to what seemed like a small chamber. Inside, beneath layers of sand so fine it clung to the skin, lay fragments of manuscripts. Sheets of parchment, their edges still sharp, the ink as dark as if it had been laid down yesterday. The script on them was like no other, a weave of curves and lines that hinted at meaning but offered no translation. Some characters seemed almost familiar, echoing alphabets from long-forgotten empires, while others felt entirely alien, belonging to a language without descendants. The parchment did not crack when handled, and its scent carried a faint note of dried herbs and smoke, as though it had been preserved by more than time. Around the chamber lay other hints of a greater structure, walls etched with patterns, niches carved with precision, perhaps once holding more scrolls now lost to the desert. Yet the sands had already begun their return, drifting in with each gust, covering the entrance grain by grain. The site seemed determined to reclaim its secrecy, as if the earth itself was hiding these words until the right moment, the right reader. Standing there, the wind humming over the dunes, one could almost imagine that the library was alive, not in the sense of breath or thought, but as a keeper of knowledge waiting patiently beneath its veil. The manuscripts rest now in the dim light of storage, untouched, unread, carrying a silence that feels deliberate. And above them, the desert moves on, swallowing the footprints of those who found it, leaving behind only the shifting skin of sand. The forest begins as a green hush, the air damp with the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth. Sunlight filters through high branches and fractured beams, catching on drifting motes of pollen. Underfoot, the path is soft, padded with fallen needles and the slow decay of leaves that have been returning to soil for centuries. The sound here is simple. The quiet drip of water from a fern's edge, the rustle of something small moving through undergrowth, the sigh of wind passing between trunks. And then, without warning, there's another sound. It is your name, spoken softly, spoken in a voice you know. Perhaps it is the voice of someone from your past, someone far away, someone who could not possibly be here. It comes from ahead, or perhaps from behind, the direction shifting like light through branches. You stop, listening. Only the forest moves. Some hikers have tried to capture the sound on recorders, but the playback offers nothing more than the faint stir of wind. Others follow the voice, stepping off the trail, pushing through damp ferns and low-hanging branches until the forest grows denser, the light thinner. Always, the name drifts just out of reach, never louder, never closer. The locals speak of the trees as listeners, saying the forest remembers those who pass through, that it holds the sound of your voice the way it holds rainwater, releasing it only when it chooses. As daylight fades, the shadows grow long, and the green canopy turns to a deeper blue. The air cools, the ground softens beneath your feet, and the voice is gone, leaving only the steady heartbeat of the woods and the knowledge that something, somewhere, spoke to you and knew who you were. In the high latitudes, where winter locks the land in ice for months on end, there is a lake that refuses to yield to the cold. The journey to reach it is long, through forests stiff with frost and valleys where the snow drifts higher than a man's shoulders. But when the trees part and the shoreline comes into view, the sight is startling, a broad expanse of dark, glassy water, rippling gently in the wind, steam rising in pale tendrils into the frozen air. The surface never ices over, not even in the sharpest grip of February when the river stands still and the air bites like glass. Scientists have lowered instruments into its depths and found pockets of warmth rising from vents along the lake bed, but the heat they release should not be enough to keep such a large body of water alive through the cold. The numbers do not fit the sight before their eyes. Local legend tells of something older than the glacier, a presence beneath the water that guards it from winter's touch. Some say it is a breath of an ancient beast that sleeps on the lake floor, exhaling warmth into the currents. Others whisper of a doorway beneath the surface, opening into places where seasons do not exist. Standing at the edge, the contrast is almost disorienting. The hiss of steam meeting air so cold it burns the lungs, the sight of water moving freely while the world around it lies still. Birds gather here in midwinter, their calls carrying across the open expanse, as though they, too, are drawn by whatever keeps the lake alive. And when the wind shifts and the mist swirls low, the reflection on the surface feels deeper than water, as though it holds not just the sky, but something waiting far below. Beneath the rolling limestone hills, where the jungle roots grip stone and the air smells faintly of rain and earth, there is an opening in the rock that swallows sound. The entrance is low, forcing visitors to bow their heads as they step into the cool breath of the cavern. Inside, the light from a lantern flickers against damp walls, stretching shadows into strange, shifting forms. The deeper you go, the more the outside world fades, replaced by the drip of unseen water and the hollow echo of your own movements. And then, without warning, another sound joins your own. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, measured. They come from ahead, always just far enough away that you cannot see the source. When you stop, they stop. When you walk, they resume, never faster, never slower, as if keeping pace with your intention, not your body. The floor beneath you is soft with fine silt, undisturbed by time, yet no prints appear, neither yours nor those of whatever walks before you. The walls bear faded paintings, spirals curling into themselves, handprint pressed in red pigment, figures with elongated eyes that seem to meet your gaze no matter where you stand. The air here is thick with the smell of minerals and something older, a scent that feels like the memory of fire. Each step forward feels like moving towards something you have already passed, as though the path is folding back on itself. The footsteps ahead are patient, never hurrying, never retreating. The explorers who have turned back speak of a peculiar sensation, that whatever was ahead of them was not leading them deeper, but quietly circling behind. And in the stillness, long after they have left, the cave holds its rhythm, waiting for the next set of ears to follow the sound that always stays just out of reach. In the quiet hour before dawn, when the horizon is a thin silver line and the sea holds its breath, some fishermen in the South Pacific have seen her, a weathered schooner, dark against the pale glow of the coming day. Her sails billow as if caught in a steady wind, yet the air is still, the water calm. No figures move on her deck, no lanterns swing in her rigging. She glides without wake, as though the ocean parts willingly to let her pass. Those who have tried to approach tell the same thing. The closer they come, the more the ship begins to lose its shape. Details blur, lines soften, and her mast dissolve into strands of mist that curl and drift away on the tide. Before long there is nothing left but empty water, rippling gently under skies still waiting for sunrise. Old naval records, centuries apart, describe her in identical terms. The curve of her hull, the faint emblem on her stern, the way she appears on certain mornings and vanishes without sound. It is as if she belongs to no single time, adrift in a loop that carries her endlessly from one generation's sight to the next. The sea around her is never rough, the swell gentle, rocking any boat that lingers nearby into a slow, almost hypnotic rhythm. Watching her from a distance feels like falling into a memory you've never had, familiar, yet impossible to place. And when she is gone, the water closes over her absence as though she had never been there at all, leaving only the steady rise and fall of the ocean, and the feeling that somewhere, just beyond the mist, she still drifts on. Along a lonely stretch of coastline, where the waves break in slow, deliberate breaths against the rock, the cliff rises sheer from the sea. Halfway up its face, beyond the reach of the highest tide, a doorway is carved into the stone. From a distance, it could be mistaken for a shadow, but up close its outline is too precise, too deliberate to be an accident of erosion. The frame is rectangular, each line straight and clean, as if marked by the edge of some forgotten craftsman's tool. The centuries have softened the surrounding cliff, pitting it with wind-stoured hollows and streaks of salt. Yet the doorway itself remains sharp, almost new. Its surface is cool beneath the hand, the stone darker within the frame than the weathered rock around it. Step closer and peer inside, and there is no passage, only solid stone where the opening should lead. No seam marks the difference between frame and wall, no sign of mortar or repair. Legends gather here like sea mist. Some say it is a gate to another place, sealed until the right hands, or the right moment in time, can open it. Others claim it was carved as a warning, not an invitation, marking the place where something dangerous was locked away. The tide below moves in its endless rhythm, each wave folding into the next with the sound of a slow exhale. To stand before it is to feel the weight of something unfinished, a question carved into stone and left unanswered for generations. The gulls wheel overhead, their cries echoing against the cliff, and the salt air clings to the skin. The sea keeps breathing beneath it all, as though marking the long, patient wait for the day the doorway opens, if it ever does. The meadow lies open beneath a wide Eastern European sky, the grass bending gently under the weight of the summer wind. The air is warm and carries the faint scent of wildflowers, bees moving lazily from bloom to bloom. Above, clouds drift in long, slow shapes, their shadows gliding over the earth in soft, uneven patches. It is a place that feels entirely honest in its light. Every leaf, every stone, every ripple in the grass visible beneath the sun's clear gaze. And yet, in this openness, some have seen a shadow that should not be there. Tall, human-shaped, it moves across the meadow with a steady pace, unhurried but deliberate. There is no body to cast it. No tree, no ridge, no trick of the light explains its form. It crosses the grass silently, the dark shape sliding over flowers and stones without disturbing them. When it reaches the edge of the meadow, it fades into the sunlight as though it had been absorbed. Photographs taken here sometimes reveal it. A figure darker than the surrounding shade, sharp-edged even under the full glare of day. In some images, it stands alone in the middle of the grass, facing the camera though no one was there to meet its gaze. The meadow continues on as though nothing has happened, the wind shifting, the clouds reshaping themselves into new forms. But for those who have seen the shadow pass, the place feels changed, not diminished, but layered, as if there is another world moving quietly alongside this one. Here, where light and dark overlap, the mind slows to match the pace of the clouds, drifting to the edges where what is seen and unseen meet, and something nameless walks without a body to carry it. In the wide, open deserts of Australia, where the sky seems to stretch forever and the dunes rise and fall like the breath of the land, there are places where the ground is littered with flat, smooth stones. In the heat of the day, they are warm underfoot, their surfaces pale beneath the relentless sun. Struck with a hand or another stone, they make only a dull, unremarkable sound, nothing that lingers in the air. But after sunset, when the air cools and the sand releases the day's heat into the night, something changes. Under the soft glow of the moon, a tap against one of these stones produces a clear, bell-like tone, pure and resonant, as though it has been waiting all day to speak. The sound carries farther than seemed possible in the still desert air, mingling with a gentle hiss of wind over the dunes. Striking several in succession creates a melody, slow and haunting, that fades into the darkness before returning in the next breath of wind. Scientists have studied them under lantern light, measuring temperature, density, and vibration, but nothing fully explains why the voice of the stones wakes only in darkness. Local elders speak of them as keepers of the night's voice, storytellers in the language of tone, speaking to the stars. They say the stones have been singing for thousands of years, and that the desert itself hums along in harmony. To stand among them in the cool desert night is to feel part of a song too vast to learn in a single lifetime. The dunes rise around you like sleeping giants, the Milky Way arches overhead, and each note from a stone seems to echo through both land and sky. Here, in the quiet hours, music lives in the earth itself, waiting for night to let it breathe. In the heart of South America, a wide river winds through dense green forests, its surface dark and slow-moving under the weight of the sky. Most of the year it runs as rivers do, carrying fallen leaves, drifting logs, and the silver flicker of fish downstream toward the sea. Villages along its banks live to its rhythm, casting nets in the early light, hauling water as the sun climbs, listening to the steady hush of current against shore. But twice each year, without warning, the river changes its mind. The current slows, hesitates, and then begins to move the other way. Logs that have been drifting toward the ocean now slide inland. Fish turn with the flow, and the water's skin ripples in unfamiliar patterns. The reversal lasts for days, the river carrying its life upstream, as though time itself is tilted and sent it back toward its source. Instruments measure the shift easily enough, the change in current, the speed, the volume. But the cause remains elusive. There is no sudden flood, no shift in wind or tide that fully accounts for it. Scientists have mapped the river's bends and depths, yet the reversal keeps its reason hidden. Standing on the bank when it happens, you feel the pull differently in your body, as if your imbalance has subtly changed. The trees lean the same way, the birds still call from their perches, but the world feels slightly unfastened, its rules bent without breaking. Watching the water slide past in the wrong direction, you begin to understand how time might flow backward too, not in great leaps, but in slow, steady days that carry you upstream, toward places you thought you had already passed. High in the thin, bright air of the Andes, where clouds brush against the peaks and the wind tastes of stone, a wall of impossible scale cuts across the mountainside. Its stones are vast and seamless, fitted so precisely that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. The wall runs for nearly a mile, tracing the curve of the ridge, before ending without ceremony. There is no gate, no crumbled ruin marking its edge. It simply stops, as if someone had paused in the middle of a sentence and never spoken again. At its unfinished end, the blocks lie half-carved, their shapes emerging from the raw rock as though frozen mid-breath. Around them, scattered in the grass, are tools that do not belong to any known culture in the region. Some are fashioned from a metal that has resisted corrosion despite centuries, perhaps millennia, in the open air. Others are shaped from stone in ways that suggest techniques unknown to the archaeologists who have studied them. The mountains here are quiet but not still. The wind moves through the valleys, carrying the thin whistle of air across the stones. Lichen grows in slow, stubborn patches, marking the centuries with faint green stains. No local legend claims the wall as its own, and the elders of nearby villages speak of it only in passing, as something left here by the ones before. To stand before it is to feel the weight of interrupted purpose, a task begun with precision and vision, abandoned for reasons lost to history. The wall does not crumble. It waits, its final stones unfinished, as if expecting the return of hands that will never come. In the stillness of the high mountain light, it feels less like a ruin and more like a question, carved into the spine of the Andes and left for the wind to keep. Off the coast of Japan, where the shoreline gives way to deep indigo water, divers have returned again and again for a sound they cannot name. It begins faintly, a deep, resonant bell tone that seems to drift upward through the layers of the sea. The note is long and rounded, its echo hanging in the mind even after it fades. There are no ships nearby, no buoys, no underwater structures to explain it. The sound comes irregularly, yet always with a strange weight of intention, as though it has been wrung for someone. Descending into the blue, the surface world slips away, the sunlight fracturing into silver ribbons, the sound of wave replaced by the slow rush of breath through a regulator. The bell seems nearer at first, each tone vibrating faintly through the body. But as you swim deeper, it becomes elusive, the direction impossible to pinpoint. It hums from everywhere and nowhere at once, the sea folding it in on itself. Marine biologists have brought recording equipment, capturing the tones with careful precision, but the patterns reveal nothing familiar. Not whale song, not seismic movement, not the resonance of metal. The locals speak of it differently. They say the bell calls to those who listen, though no one can say where it calls from. Some believe it marks a passing of something unseen, an announcement made not to the living world, but to whatever lies beneath it. The deeper you go, the softer it becomes, until it is less a sound and more sensation, felt in the chest like a memory. The water grows colder, the light dims, and the bell fades into the vast, blue silence. When you return to the surface, breaking into air and sunlight, the sea is calm, as if it has kept its secret for another day, ringing only for those who are willing to descend and not demand an answer. In the early hours of certain mornings, when the valley in Scotland lies hidden under a blanket of thick white fog, a bridge appears. It arches gracefully between two hills, its stonework pale and damp, the surface slick with beads of moisture. The structure seems timeless, the kind of craftsmanship that suggests hands long gone, each block perfectly placed, the curve steady and sure. It has no markings, no signs of wear, as though it has been waiting untouched for centuries. The locals know it well, though few speak of it to strangers. They say the bridge has no weight in the present, that it belongs to another time entirely, showing itself only when the fog is deep enough to soften the boundaries between now and then. By midday, when the mist burns away under the sun, there is nothing between the hills but open air and the long drop into the valley below. Walking here when the bridge appears is like stepping into a dream that offers no guarantee of holding your weight. The fog curls around your legs, clings to your coat, and beads along your eyelashes. Footsteps are muffled, and the world beyond the edges of the bridge is a pale void. Each step forward carries a question of whether the next will touch stone or nothing at all. Those who have crossed speak of a strange stillness halfway over, a moment when the air grows heavy and the sounds of the valley vanish completely. Some claim they have heard faint music there, or the murmur of voices speaking in an unfamiliar tongue. When they reach the far side, the land feels subtly different, as if they have stepped into a version of the hills that is not quite the one they left. And then, as the fog thins and the first rays of sunlight reach the valley floor, the bridge fades, its stones dissolving into the air until there is only the empty space between hills. The mist unravels, and the path that seemed so solid becomes just another part of the morning's memory, as unreachable as the bridge itself until the fog returns. It happened in the early hours of a winter morning in 1972. A small European village lay under a thin veil of frost, the streets empty, the houses dark. Inside, families slept beneath heavy blankets, the air still except for the soft creak of timbers settling in the cold. And then, without notice or noise, every clock stopped. Wristwatches, kitchen timers, mantel clocks, the great brass hands of the church tower, all froze at precisely 3:15 a.m. No one knew it until morning, when the village awoke to a strange, weightless quiet. The bells did not chime, the trains did not run on time, and in every home the clock stared back with the same unmoving hour and minute. People wound them, shook them, checked their batteries, but nothing happened. They simply would not move. And then, as suddenly as it began, the hands turned again. Hours later, without a touch from human hands, every clock restarted at the exact same second, ticking in perfect unison as if nothing had happened. Watches on wrists, clocks on walls, and the tower above the square all came back to life, their steady rhythms weaving the sound of time back into the village. No one could say where those missing hours had gone. The air had not changed. No storms had passed. There were no reports of power loss or mechanical failure. It was as if time itself had paused, holding the village gently in place while something unseen moved through. Even now, decades later, the people who were there remember the stillness more than the confusion. It was a silence unlike any other, not empty, but full, as if the world was listening for something that never came. And when the ticking returned, it felt less like a machine resuming its wake, and more like the slow exhale of something that had been holding its breath. Deep in the North American forest, where the trees grow tall enough to hide the sky and the undergrowth muffles every step, there's a place where the earth breaks its pattern. Between the trunks, in a small clearing where the sunlight falls in a narrow column, a staircase rises from the ground. It is made of pale stone, each step perfectly even, the edges crisp and unweathered. No moss grows on its surface. No cracks show the touch of frost or rain. It is as though it has been placed there not years ago, but moments before you arrived. There is no foundation beneath it, no ruins, no walls, no trace of a building it might have once belonged to. The staircase simply begins at the forest floor and ascends straight into open air, stopping abruptly where there should be a landing or a doorway. The forest surrounds it, silent but watchful, the trees standing just far enough back to leave a wide circle of bare ground around the base. Those who have climbed the steps speak of a strange shift halfway up. The sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the creak of branches, fade until there's nothing at all. The air feels denser, as though you stepped into a place where the rules of sound no longer apply. At the top, there's only sky. The clearing below looks smaller from up there, the trees closer, their branches knit tight as if guarding something. When you descend, The sound returned gradually, like water seeping back into dry soil. The birds call again, the wind stays the leaves, and the forest exhales. But the memory of that silence clings to you, a stillness too complete to be natural. The stairs remain, waiting in the clearing, untouched by time, rising toward nothing, or perhaps toward something that has not yet arrived. High in the Alaskan wilderness, where the air is sharp enough to sting the lungs and the light glances off endless fields of white, a glacier lies draped across the mountains like a slow-moving river of glass. Its surface is fractured with deep crevasses and ridges where the ice has buckled under its own weight. Yet it moves with the patience of centuries, shifting so subtly that you can only measure its progress against memory. Climbers who pause on its flanks sometimes hear it. A sound so faint it might be imagined, yet too clear to dismiss. It is music, soft and harmonic, the notes suspended in the cold air like threads of light. The tones shift with the seasons, bright and high in spring, when meltwater runs beneath the ice, deeper and more resonant in winter when the glacier is locked in stillness. The sound doesn't seem to echo from the surface. It feels as though it rises from deep within, traveling through miles of frozen crystal before reaching the air. Microphones have been placed against the ice, instruments tuned to capture the subtlest vibrations, but they record nothing, only the faint hiss of wind. The music belongs only to the listener in the moment, as if the glacier chooses its audience and refuses to speak when observed by machines. Standing there, with the peaks pressing close and the sun a pale disk in the frozen sky, it is impossible not to feel the sound in the body as much as hear it. The ice becomes more than ice. It is an instrument tuned by time, by pressure, by the slow carving of valleys and the weight of forgotten winters. And as you move on, the music fades, leaving only the crunch of boots on snow and the knowledge that somewhere behind you, the glacier still sings, waiting for the next pair of ears willing to listen without asking to record. The bay is quiet at night, its waters held in the curved arms of dark headlands that keep the wind away. The air smells of salt and the faint sweetness of mangroves, their roots reaching into the tide. Moonlight lays a silver path across the surface, broken only by the slow dip of oars and the soft ripple that spreads from each stroke. It is a place where sound travels far, yet the night often feels too deep to echo. It is here, in the still hours before dawn, that the lights appear, pale and round. They drift just above the water's skin, glowing with a softness that seems to belong more to the air than to any flame. They move without hurry, sliding over the bay as though guided by an unseen current. From a distance, they might be mistaken for lanterns hung low over small boats, but the water beneath them remains undisturbed. Sailors have watched them for generations, telling stories of the drowned whose souls return to the bay, wandering its surface in the quiet hours. Approach too closely, and the lights fade like breath on glass, only to reappear far away, their glow undiminished. No one has ever touched one, and no photograph has captured them as they truly are. The images always come out dull, the light drained as if it refuses to be kept. Drifting here, the boat rocking gently, you begin to sense the rhythm of the place, the slow heartbeat of the tide, the distant lap of water against the rocks. The oar lifts and drips into the stillness, each drop sounding loud before disappearing into the black water. The lights continue their silent passage, keeping their distance, never colliding, never touching shore. And when the first blush of dawn reaches the horizon, they vanish entirely, leaving only the bay and the faint memory of their glow, as if they had been nothing more than a dream the sea allowed you to see for a while. Far from any road, hidden within the dense green folds of a European forest, a cathedral rises unexpectedly from the trees. Its towers pierce the canopy, their stone spires etched with patterns that catch the dappled light. The walls are built from blocks of varying hues, some worn and pitted as if they have stood for hundreds of years, others sharp-edged and smooth, as though carved yesterday. The architecture is a puzzle, Gothic arches standing beside Renaissance flourishes, doorways framed in a style older than both. No history book names its builder, no archive records its first stone. The path to it is faint, little more than a trail where the grass grows thinner, as if the forest is reluctant to guide you there. Yet the great wooden doors are never locked. They swing open with a slow groan, revealing an interior where light filters through stained glass and fractured color. Dust lies thick along the windowsills, the altar steps, the carved railings, but not on the pews. The wood there is bare of any powder, as though brushed clean by invisible hands, as though someone, or something, still comes to sit in the stillness. The air smells faintly of stone and candle wax, though no candles burn. The silence is laid, the kind that holds its breath between each creak of the old timbers. Swallows nest in the rafters, their calls brief and soft, quickly swallowed by the high ceiling. Outside, the forest presses close, the light dimming toward evening. No one in the nearby villages claims a cathedral, yet all know of it. Some speak of it as a place that belongs to the forest itself, raised without human hands. Others say it was built by those who needed no record, no name, no witness. Inside, the air feels as though it has been waiting, the empty pews arranged for a congregation that has not yet arrived, or perhaps one that never truly left. In the summer of 1908, the Siberian wilderness awoke to a light that should not have existed. Witnesses in distant villages spoke of a fireball crossing the sky, brighter than the sun, its passage followed by a heat so intense it seemed to press through the walls of their homes. Moments later, the earth shook, a deep and rolling tremor that cracked the silence of the taiga. And then came the blast, a sound so vast it was felt as much as heard, reverberating across hundreds of miles. When explorers finally reached the site weeks later, they found a forest undone. For mile after mile, trees lay flattened in perfect radial patterns, their trunks pointing outward from a center that held no crater, no shard of stone or metal to mark the intruder's fall. The ground was scorched, but in the very heart of the destruction, some trees still stood, their bark stripped away, their branches gone, as if flayed by a wave of heat and wind without being toppled. Theories have tried to claim the mystery, a comet's icy core vaporizing before it touched the earth, a meteor exploding high in the atmosphere, even a fragment of something not of this world. But the evidence is incomplete, the event too fleeting to leave more than scattered clues. No debris was ever found, no remnant that could be held in the hand and named. Today, the site is quiet again. Young trees have grown where the old ones fell, their green needles swaying in the slow northern wind. The marshy ground hides its past under moss and shallow pools. Yet to stand there is to feel the echo of that morning, to imagine the light in the sky that came without warning and left without a trace, a visitor whose passing was felt across half the earth, but who left the land holding only the question of what it truly was. In a quiet rural stretch of India, far from the noise of cities, an old-date road winds between fields and groves of tamarind and neem. By day it is unremarkable, a dusty path lined with stones, its route known by every farmer and traveler who has walked it since childhood. Ox carts leave shallow ruts, children chase each other along its length, and the sun beats down on its pale, packed earth. Yet those who live here insist the road does not always keep its shape. In the mornings, stones that once marked its edges are sometimes found meters away, arranged with deliberate precision in a new line. Whole sections curve where they had been straight the day before, or split into two paths that rejoin further on. Maps grow unreliable, sketched routes becoming useless within weeks. Travelers who follow it at night or in the early hours have been known to walk in patient circles, returning to the same tree or bend as though the road itself has folded back on them. There is no noise when it happens, no sound of heavy tools, no scraping of stone, only the deep, still dark of the countryside, the occasional rustle of leaves in a passing breeze, the hum of crickets, and the distant bark of a dog. Some say the road is an old thing, older than the villages it connects, and that it moves to hide or reveal places according to its own design. To walk it after sunset is to step into a world where the ground is not to be trusted. The moonlight spills over the dust, catching on the pale stones, each one now a question. Was it here yesterday? The night feels like a quiet architect, rearranging the world while no one watches, leaving the road in a shape that only it understands. And when the sun rises, the path is taken for what it is, even if it is no longer what it was. Beneath the cool, green waters of the coast of Sweden, where the light from the surface filters down in soft, swaying ribbons, there lies a circle. It is formed of stones, large, weathered, and worn smooth by centuries of current, yet arranged with such precision that no two sit unevenly, no space breaks the symmetry. Each rock leans slightly inward, as though the formation were built to hold something once at its center. The divers who first found it had been exploring a stretch of seabed known for its calm waters and slow-moving tides. It was a place where sand drifted lazily in the current and eelgrass swayed in long green curtains. And then, there it was, a perfect ring resting in the dim light, its edges sharp despite the softness of its surroundings. Dating the stones revealed that they predated any known human settlement in the region. There were no wrecks nearby, no evidence of a fallen structure, no trace of tools or anchors. The arrangement was deliberate, but its purpose remained invisible, the silence of the sea keeping its reason intact. Above, the water stays unusually calm, as though the surface mirrors the stillness below. Even in stormy weather, when waves break hard against the coast, the area above the circle rarely churns. It is as if the sea itself guards the place from hasty eyes, preserving the stones in their quiet order. When the divers rose back into the daylight, the image of the circle stayed with them, a perfect geometry hidden from the world, its design too deliberate to be chance, too old to be explained. And under the water, in the filtered green light, it remains as it has for untold ages, the current tracing its edges in a motion so slow it feels like time itself is moving around it. At the edge of a high cliff in Ireland, where the land drops sharply into the restless sea, a stone cottage stands alone against the wind. Its walls are built from pale, rough-hewn rock, the kind that dots the fields for miles inland. From a distance, it looks unremarkable, a simple home, the sort that might once have sheltered a fishing family or a solitary shepherd. Yet, for more than 100 years, it has remained exactly as it is now. Photographs taken decades apart show no change. The stones are uncracked, their mortar as tight as the day it was set. The roof does not sag, the shutters do not peel, and no moss clings to its shaded corners. In a land where salt air wears everything, where storms gnaw the cliffs and rust eats through metal in the season, the cottage remains untouched by time. The door is never locked. Inside, the air smells faintly of fresh wood smoke, though no fire burns. The furniture is simple, a table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed, all clean, all without dust. On some visits, the hearth is still warm to the touch, a small pile of ash lying neatly beneath the grate. Yet no one is ever seen entering or leaving. Locals pass the place without comment, their silence about it as solid as the walls themselves. The cliffside wind whistles around the house, rattling the grass but never disturbing the structure. The sea crashes below, sending up bursts of white spray, but the stones never darken with moisture. Standing before it, you might feel the sense that it is not abandoned, only waiting, its presence steady, its care unseen. And when you leave, the image of it stays with you, a home untouched by weather, by time, and perhaps by the rules that govern the rest of the world. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins to a sharp clarity and the peaks rise like frozen waves, there is one mountain that answers in a way no other does. Its slopes are sheer and silvered with ice, its summit lost more often than not in coils of cloud. Climbers say it watches the valley below like a sentinel, and those who approach its base speak of a strange feeling, a sense that the mountain is listening. It was here that explorers first noticed the echoes. A shout, a strike of ice axe against rock, even the sound of boots crunching on frozen scree would return not in a quick, sharp reflection, but in a slow, resonant tone, as though the sound had traveled through vast chambers before returning to the air. The echoes seemed to carry farther than they should, rolling deep into the valley and back again, the way a voice might behave in a cathedral or a cavern. Instruments confirmed the peculiarity. Sound waves lingered unnaturally, their patterns suggesting hollow spaces within the mountain's core. Yet no cave entrances have been found, no fissures large enough to suggest the holes such echoes would require. Local legend speaks of a hidden city sealed inside, built by a people who vanished before history began. They say the mountain's heart is not empty but alive with the still air of streets and plazas unseen by any living eyes, their stone walls lit only by a sun that no longer touches the outside world. On clear days, when the wind drops and the valley lies in perfect silence, a single word spoken at the base can seem to linger for minutes, a ghost of sound looping through the unseen chambers. Those who have heard it leave with the impression that the mountain does not simply reflect what it hears, it holds it, turning the echo over and over as if weighing the meaning before letting it go. And always, when it answers, it is in that same slow, deep voice, the voice of something vast and hidden, breathing within the stone. In the spring of 1977, a historian living in a quiet Italian hill town opened his post to find an envelope unlike any other. The paper was thick and slightly yellowed, the address written in an elegant hand, but in a script he did not recognize. The postmark bore the name of a place that no longer appeared on maps, a town erased decades earlier by war and time. Inside was a letter, written in the same flowing script, the ink a deep, even black that seemed untouched by age. He could not read a word. At first, he thought it a curiosity, perhaps a mistake, but more letters followed. One each month, then sometimes two, always arriving with postmarks from vanished cities, collapsed borders, or regions swallowed by the sea. The handwriting never varied, each letter filled with lines and symbols that hinted at meaning without revealing it. He showed them to linguists, historians, even cryptographers, but no one could match the language to anything known. The paper felt unlike modern stock, soft but strong, with a faint scent of something floral, almost like pressed violets. The envelopes were sealed with wax, each imprint slightly different, yet always featuring the same motif, a small circle surrounded by rays, like a sun seen through mist. For 3 years, the letters came, until one day they simply stopped. No farewell, no explanation, no final clue. The historian kept them all in a wooden box lined with linen, opening it from time to time to run his fingers over the smooth paper, wondering if they were meant for him at all, or if he had been nothing more than the caretaker for messages written to no one in particular. Even now, the ink remains dark, the paper uncreased, as though the letters exist outside the reach of time. They tie the present to something unreachable, fragile threads running back into the shadows of a past that may never have been entirely real, or that may still be writing to us, somewhere, in a language we have yet to understand. Deep in the Amazon, where the canopy forms a living ceiling and the light that reaches the ground is green and dim, the jungle guarded its secrets with layers of leaf, vine, and shadow. From above, satellites have captured images of something startling, a series of perfect stone pillars, rising from the earth in geometric patterns too precise to be natural. The formations resemble the ruins of a great plaza or temple, each pillar spaced at exact intervals, forming lines and circles like the marks of an unseen hand. On the ground, the story changes. Expeditions that set out to reach the pillars find only endless vegetation, trunks wrapped in strangler figs, ferns high as a person's chest, and creepers tangled thick enough to feel like rope. The air is heavy here, each breath damp and warm, every step sinking into the soft mat of centuries-old leafall. Compass needles waver. GPS signals weaken. Landmarks vanish into the sameness of green. Some teams have returned to the exact coordinates again and again, finding no trace of stone. Others report brief glimpses, the edge of a carved surface beneath moss, a smooth corner just visible before the vines close over it. It is as if the jungle decides when and to whom it will show its hidden geometry. Local guides speak softly of a place that does not wish to be disturbed, a sight that shifts in and out of reach like a mirage. They say the pillars stand in the same pattern they have for centuries, perhaps longer, but that the forest has learned to pull a curtain over them when strangers approach. In the green half-light, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and crushed leaves, the possibility of their presence feels almost tangible. Every rustle in the undergrowth could be the brush of vine against ancient stone. And as you move deeper, the forest seems to close in behind you, as if it is swallowing your path, ensuring that if you ever reach the pillars, it will be because the jungle decided you were meant to. In the vast stillness of Antarctica, where the horizon is a perfect line and the air itself feels frozen, there are stretches of ice so thick and ancient they seem eternal. It is here, far from any station or sign of habitation, that researchers have reported something strange, faint blue lights moving beneath the ice. At first, they are little more than smudges of color in the white, soft pulses that shift and glide like fish in an invisible sea. The ice in these regions is meters thick, layered over centuries, compacted until it is almost as hard as stone. Instruments lowered into drill cores register nothing unusual. No heat signature, no magnetic anomaly, nothing to explain the glow. And yet, standing there in the pale light of an Antarctic day, the shapes move with the unmistakable intention of living things, turning, drifting, vanishing into deeper opacity before reappearing elsewhere. The closer one approaches, the more the lights fade. Steps crunch across the crusted surface, breath fogs in the air, and by the time the spot is reached, there is only white, the endless, unbroken white, stretching in every direction under sky so pale it blends into the land. Wait long enough, and the glow will retain, but never exactly where it was before. Some suggest that the effect is a trick of light, refracted through layers of ice and snow. Others wonder if something moves in the dark water trapped far below, some life adapted to an existence without sunlight. Those who have seen it without a camera in hand often say that no image could capture its presence anyway, that the glow feels as much sense as it is seen. And when the wind rises, skimming loose snow over the surface, the lights vanish entirely, swallowed by the weather until the air stills again. In their absence, the ice is silent, the cold absolute, as though whatever moves beneath has simply drifted out of sight, waiting for the surface world to forget it is there. High in the mountains of South America, where the air is thin and the sky seems impossibly close, there's a village of stone houses and narrow, winding streets that lives under a peculiar rhythm of light. Most of the year, the sun pours across its rooftops like molten gold, casting long, sharp shadows that stretch over cobblestones and walls. But for 3 days each year, something changes. The sun still rises, the sky still shines without a cloud, yet the village is emptied of shadow. It happens suddenly, as if someone has turned a page. One morning, the light falls evenly over every surface, walls, doors, faces, without carving any darkness between them. The corners of buildings are no darker than their fronts, and the undersides of balconies glow as brightly as the streets below. Even the people walking the alleys seem oddly flat, their forms lacking the depth that shadow gives. Photographs taken during these days capture it clearly, a soft, shadowless illumination that smooths the world into a single tone, as though contrast itself has been removed. Scientists who have visited with light meters and instruments have yet to agree on the cause. Some suggest atmospheric refraction, others a unique interplay of the mountain slopes and angles, but the geometry never quite explains the perfection of the effect. Locals accept it without fuss. They call it the even days, a time when the world feels briefly gentler, as if every edge has been sanded smooth. Work slows. Children play in the bright streets, their movements strange without the dark doubling of their bodies on the ground. And then, on the fourth morning, shadows return without warning, long and sharp once more, as if nothing unusual had happened. The stone walls regain their lines, the streets their depth. But for those 3 days each year, the village feels like a place unbound from the normal rules of light, where the sun shines or forgets how to divide the world into dark and bright. In the heart of a North African desert, far from any road or settlement, the sand gives way to something impossible. Where the dunes roll in soft waves of gold, there is suddenly a flat expanse that gleams under the sun, a surface so smooth and flawless it looks as though a piece of the sky has fallen and settled on the earth. From a distance, it appears like water, a mirage that should vanish as you approach. But it does not vanish. The surface stretches for hundreds of meters, a perfect oval of glass-like material with no seams, no joints, no visible edge where it meets the sand. Its reflection is uncannily sharp. The blue of the sky, the white drift of clouds, even the faint glint of the sun's arc appear without distortion, as if you are looking into an untouched mirror. Birds flying overhead double themselves below, as if the world has two skies, one above and one beneath your feet. There are no signs of tools, no tracks, no explanation for how it came to be. Samples taken from the edge reveal material unlike glass or stone, harder than quartz yet strangely cool to the touch even under the desert's midday heat. When you step onto it, the sensation is disorienting. The ground disappears, replaced by an infinite depth of blue and cloud beneath your shoes. Each footfall sounds muted, as if the surface swallows sound along with shadow. Legends among the nomadic tribes speak of it as a place where the earth opens to the heavens, a threshold between the mortal world and something greater. Some say that at night, when the stars appear, the surface reflects constellations that do not match the sky above, showing patterns from another time or another place entirely. Standing there, surrounded by desert silence, the horizon vanishes. It feels less like walking on land and more like stepping across the skin of the sky itself, with nothing between you and the endless blue but a surface too perfect to be explained. In the rolling countryside of rural Turkey, scattered among fields of wheat and olive groves, there are wells older than any village that now surrounds them. Their stone walls are worn smooth, their rims polished by the hands of countless generations drawing water. Some are capped with weathered wooden lids, others left open to the sky, their dark mouths breathing cool air from far below. They have been here longer than anyone remembers, their builders unknown. It is said these wells can speak to one another. Locals tell of leaning over the edge and whispering a message, only for it to be heard clearly in another well miles away. The voice is always soft but distinct, as if carried on a current of still, underground air. There are stories of lovers speaking under the cover of night, of warnings sent across valleys before riders could arrive, of a shepherd hearing his name from a well as he watered his flock. Scientists have measured their depths, mapped the surrounding land, and found no tunnels connecting them, no chambers, no pipes, no natural channels large enough to carry a human voice. Yet the phenomenon continues, as dependable as the wells themselves. The sound seems to pass not through rock or soil, but through the darkness itself. Standing beside one, the field stretching quiet to the horizon, you hear only the creak of trees and the wind and the occasional call of a bird. Lean closer, peering into the black circle of water far below, and the air feels cooler against your face. Speak, and your words seem to sink, as if being drawn in. Wait, and sometimes, faintly, another voice returns, not an echo, but an answer, coming from a place you cannot see. The wells remain where they have always been, their stones set deep in the earth, their purpose perhaps long forgotten. Yet they still seem to listen, still willing to carry word across unseen distances, whispering softly through the dark spaces beneath the world. In a quiet gallery of a maritime museum in Lisbon, behind glass that softens the light, there rests a map unlike any other. At first glance, it is simply an old chart, parchment yellowed with age, edges frayed, its ink faded to the warm brown of time. It shows the seas as they were once known, with coastlines carefully inked, islands dotted like stepping stones, and compass roses adorned with ornate flourishes. But to those who have studied it closely, something strange becomes clear. The map does not stay the same. Each time it is unrolled, the shapes of the lands have shifted. A bay deepens, a peninsula narrows, an island slips farther out to sea. The changes are subtle, almost shy, yet undeniable. Photographs taken decades apart confirm it. The alterations are real, each one small enough to avoid immediate notice but significant enough to trace over time. Experts have examined it, looking for warping of the parchment or the slow creep of ink, but the map's material is stable, preserved under conditions that should prevent change. No chemical process explains why it redraws itself. Some suggest it is a work of a long-forgotten navigational trick, an artist's hidden mechanism revealed only under certain temperatures or humidity. But others whisper a different theory, that the map holds the memory of a navigator who once carried it, and that it is still recording what he saw, erasing and rewriting the world according to journeys no one else can follow. Standing before it, you can almost believe this. The coastlines have a softness to them, as though they are breathing, subtly adjusting under your gaze. The inked waters between them seem to ripple faintly, even in the still air of the gallery. You imagine the sound of waves, the creak of rope, the steady pull of the tide, the life of a chart that is not just a record of the world, but a living reflection of it, still traveling in ways its keeper never returned to tell. At first light, when the surface of the remote lake is still as glass and the world seems to hold its breath, a mist gathers over the water. It clings lower first, swirling faintly in the chill air, and then begins to thicken, folding the shoreline into a pale, shifting veil. It is in this hour, just before the sun breaks fully over the horizon, that the fishermen speak of the tower. Rising from the center of the mist, it appears slowly, as though lifting itself from the water's surface. Tall and straight, built of pale stone, it climbs into the fog until its peak is lost from view. Through binoculars, its walls are etched with intricate carvings, lines of figures, twisting patterns, and symbols that seem too precise, too deliberate, to be the random work of cloud and light. Even from a distance, there is a sense of depth to them, as if the grooves have been worn by centuries of wind and rain. No one has ever reached it. Boats that set out toward the tower find only empty water, the mist closing around them until the shoreline itself disappears. By the time the sun climbs high enough to burn away the fog, the lake lies open and bare, its surface unbroken by stone or shadow. The villagers treat the tower as a fact, though it leaves no trace, no ripple, no reflection, no disturbance in the water where it stands. Some believe it belongs to another time, a remnant of a place the lake has since swallowed, appearing only in the fragile hour when night has not fully yielded to day. Others think it is a warning, a shape meant to be seen but not reached. On mornings when the air is cold and the mist drifts low, the fishermen watch for it. They row out a short distance, let their oars rest, and wait. And when the shape rises from the white, they keep their silence, as if afraid to speak might cause it to vanish before its time. Then, as the sun grows stronger, it fades again into nothing, leaving the lake as calm and empty as though it had never been there at all. In the dry heart of New Mexico, there is a canyon carved by wind and water into walls the color of rusted copper. It is not the tallest canyon, nor the widest, but those who find their way here speak of it in tones reserved for the uncanny. The air is dry and still, carrying the scent of sun-warmed stone and desert sage. It is quiet enough that you can hear the crunch of your own footsteps long after they stop. And then, if you speak, the canyon answers. A single word, even whispered, will return again and again, lingering far beyond what the laws of sound should allow. It does not snap back in a sharp reflection as echoes normally do, but rolls through the canyon in soft repetitions, as if your voice has taken root in the stone and is slowly letting go. Minutes can pass before it fades completely. It is not the only strange thing. Some visitors claim the sound changes subtly in its journey, a shift in tone, a stretching of vowels, the faint impression of another rhythm overlaid upon your own. A few insist that after the third or fourth return, the echo is no longer quite their voice, but something else imitating it, keeping just enough of the original to feel familiar. Scientists who have visited with sound equipment have measured the reverberation times and found them inexplicable. The rock formations are irregular, their surfaces weathered and broken, conditions that should scatter sound quickly. Yet here, the canyon holds it close, carrying it along the winding walls as though reluctant to let it go. Standing at its center, the sun casting narrow beams into the depths, you can feel the weight of the silence between each retain. Not emptiness, but a waiting presence. Speak, and the canyon will take your voice, turn it over in its unseen spaces, and hand it back to you, change in ways you may not notice until the sound has already begun to fade. And when it is gone, the stillness that follows feels deeper than before, as if the place has listened to you and now keeps a piece of what you said. Far out in the ocean, beyond the reach of the mainland's noise, there is an island of jagged cliffs and narrow beaches where the wind moves ceaselessly over the water. The air here is alive with the sound of wings, a species of small black birds that seem to belong entirely to the sky. They move in loose, drifting flocks, their shapes wheeling and tilting in unison, their feathers catching the light in flashes of deep, oil-slick blue. The locals say no one has ever seen one land. They pass over the island's rocky ledges without stopping, skim the surface of the sea without touching it, and circle above the forest without descending. Even in storms, when the wind roars and the rain falls in hard, slanting sheets, the birds remain aloft, their movement steady, their rhythm unchanged. Their wings beat in a pattern that feels older than the tides, a measured cadence that does not quicken or falter. It is as if each bird carries the same tempo, and together they form a single, unbroken motion across the sky. No nests have been found, no eggshells, no feathers scattered on the ground. At night they vanish into the dark above the island, and by dawn they are there again, tracing the horizon in perfect arcs. Biologists who have come to study them leave with more questions than answers. There are theories that they sleep in the air, that they feed only on insects carried by the wind, that their bodies are adapted for perpetual motion in a way unlike any other known bird. But without a moment of rest to observe them closely, each explanation remains speculation. To watch them for any length of time is to feel the pull of their constancy. The sea may shift, the clouds may change, but the birds remain, moving as if bound to a cycle only they can feel. They are not in a hurry, yet they are never still, their wings carrying them over the island as they have for as long as anyone can remember, a living current in the sky, flowing without pause. In a remote corner of Eastern Europe, where the hills fold into one another in quiet green waves, there is a cave known to the locals but seldom marked on maps. Its entrance is narrow, framed by moss-covered stone, and the air that drifts from it is cool even in the height of summer. Step inside, and the light from the outside world fades quickly, replaced by a dimness that feels almost physical, as though it clings to the skin. The passages wind downward, the walls damp and glistening, the air carrying the faint scent of stone dust and slow-moving water. Hey, sound is muted. Footsteps seem to land softly, voices sink into the rock, and even the drip of water feels distant. Those who explore it often speak of losing their sense of time. What feels like an hour's journey within the twisting tunnels can reveal, upon emerging, that an entire day or more has passed. Watchers behave strangely inside. Some slow, others stop altogether, their hands frozen as though caught mid-second. Digital displays dim and fade, refusing to keep pace with the world above. No clear pattern emerges. The effect can happen in one chamber and not the next, in one visit but not another. Cavers who have returned speak of the disorientation as subtle rather than sudden. Time doesn't seem to rush or drag. It simply slips from you unnoticed, as though the cave is quietly borrowing it. The deeper you go, the stronger the sensation becomes, until the outside world feels like a memory from much longer ago than it should. When you finally step back into daylight, the sun's position is wrong, the air warmer or cooler than expected, and the shadows on the hills have shifted far beyond what they should in the time you thought you'd been gone. The cave remains behind you, still and silent, keeping whatever it does with the hours it takes, returning nothing but the cool scent of stone and the faint sound of dripping water. In the far reaches of Greenland, where the ice stretches to the horizon and the air carries a sharp, clean scent of snow, a glacier meets the sea in a slow, grinding edge of white and blue. Over the decades, that edge has taken on a shape uncanny in its familiarity, the likeness of a human face. From a distance, the proportions are startlingly precise, a broad brow, deep-set eyes, a straight nose, and a mouth drawn in an expression that seems caught between watchfulness and weariness. The face was not carved by human hands. It has grown from the glacier itself, sculpted by the patient work of wind, meltwater, and the slow collapse of ice. Each summer, when the sun lingers longer and the surface begins to soften, subtle changes appear. A deepening around the eyes, a softening of the mouth, a tilt to the jawline, as if the glacier is caught in a moment of thought. When winter returns, the cold freezes these changes in place until the next cycle. Locals who live along the nearby coast say the glacier has been looking in a direction for as long as they can remember. Some describe the changes in its expression as moods, a year of sternness followed by a year of quiet sadness, then one of faint, almost imperceptible smiles. To scientists, it is a study in ice dynamics and the shifting structure of the glacier's edge, yet even they admit the resemblance is too perfect to ignore. Standing before it, the scale becomes overwhelming. The eyes are dark hollows large enough to hold a house, the mouth a deep fissure where seawater laps in slow, deliberate waves. The air is filled with the distant cracks and groans of the ice, a low, shifting voice that seems to come from deep within. And as the seasons turn, the glacier continues its slow performance, changing its expression as if marking the passage of years, a face not carved in stone, but in ice, aging under the endless light of the Arctic sky. High in the mountains of South America, where the air is thin and the nights are so clear that the stars seem close enough to touch, there stands an archway carved from a single block of stone. It rises from the earth without mortar or seam, its edges perfectly squared, its surface worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Alone on a flat plateau, it has no walls, no doors, nothing to suggest it was ever part of a larger structure. And yet, the people of the nearby valley speak of it with a mixture of reverence and unease. They say it is a doorway, but not in the way one might think. Most of the time, it is nothing more than an opening in the stone through which the mountains and sky can be seen. But once every 100 years, on a night when the stars form a certain pattern overhead, something changes. The air within the archway shimmers, the darkness deepens, and the space beyond no longer matches the land behind it. Instead, there is a faint golden light and the suggestion of a passage descending into the earth. According to the oldest records, this has happened only twice in living memory. Both times, witnesses say, people stepped through, explorers, drawn by the promise of discovery. Neither they nor any trace of them were ever seen again. The archway is silent now, standing against the horizon like a monument to absence. At night, the wind moves through it with a low, hollow tone, as if the stone remembers the voices of those who crossed. During the day, the plateau is empty but for the shadows of cloud passing overhead. Some believe the passage leads to a hidden city, sealed away since before history began. Others think it is not part of this world at all, but an opening to somewhere, or somewhen else, whatever lies beyond. It waits in silence for the next alignment of the stars, patient in a way only stone can be, holding its secret until the sky turns to the same ancient pattern once more. In a secluded bay in the Pacific, far from the main shipping routes and sheltered by long arms of rocky coastline, the water is almost always calm. But a few times each year, something happens that transforms it entirely. Without warning, the surface becomes so still, so flawlessly smooth, that it ceases to look like water at all. It reflects the sky above with such precision that the horizon disappears, and the world feels doubled, one sky above and another below, separated only by the faintest line where they meet. Fishermen who have witnessed it say the change is sudden. One moment, the water carries a soft sway of the tide, and the next, every movement halts. The reflections sharpen until even the smallest detail, a wisp of cloud, the edge of a bird's wing, is mirrored perfectly below. Boats anchored in the bay seem to hover in the air, their hulls suspended between two skies. The effect lasts only minutes. Then, without sound or visible cause, the first ripples return, breaking perfection into 1,000 shifting fragments. Within moments, the bay looks ordinary again, its surface moving with a familiar rhythm of tide and wind. No pattern has been found to predict when it will happen. It is not tied to season, tide, or moon, though some believe it comes only when the air, the water, and the light find a balance too delicate to last. Those who have stood in the center of it describe a strange stillness, as if the world has paused just long enough to let them see a hidden truth. The air feels lighter, the colors sharper, and there's a faint hum in the silence, a presence that vanishes as soon as the water moves again. The locals do not try to explain it. They accept it as part of the bay's nature, a brief and perfect mirror offered only to those who happen to be watching at the right moment. And once it passes, the memory lingers, like a dream too vivid to forget but too fleeting to hold. In the dense jungles of Cambodia, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of wet earth and orchids, a temple stands half swallowed by the green. Its towers rise above the canopy, their stone surfaces streaked with moss and lichen, their peaks draped in vines that sway in the slow, humid breeze. From a distance, it looks like the many other ancient structures scattered across the region, relics of empires long past. But as you draw closer, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Every wall is sealed. There are no doors, no windows, no archways through which to pass. The stone is unbroken from foundation to pinnacle, its surface carved with intricate reliefs that cover every inch. The scenes they depict are unfamiliar. Battles between figures whose armor and weapons match no known culture, celestial maps that chart constellations which do not align with the night sky as we see it today, and processions of animals both real and strange. Ground-penetrating scans have revealed hollow chambers within large spaces, arranged in a pattern that suggests ceremonial or sacred use. But there is no visible means of entering them. No collapsed corridors, no hidden panels, no evidence of any passage that has since been sealed. It is as though the temple was built complete, its interior forever cut off from the outside world. The jungle presses close around it, the calls of birds and insects forming a constant chorus. At the base, the air feels cooler, the shadows deeper, as if the structure draws heat and light into itself. Some local stories say it was never meant to be entered, that the people who built it raised it not for the living, but for beings who could pass through stone as easily as air. Others believe the walls are not barriers at all, but doors that open only under conditions long forgotten. Whatever lies inside remains untouched, sealed away behind walls that have endured for centuries. And as the forest grows thicker each year, the temple seems to sink further into its embrace, as though it is slowly being reclaimed by the same earth that once gave it rise. High in the interior of South Africa, a solitary mountain rises from the surrounding hills, its slopes covered in a patchwork of grasslands and sparse forest. Above its peak, a single white cloud hangs in the sky, always the same size, always the same shape, unmoved by the restless air around it. Generations of people in the nearby villages have grown up with it, their lives marked by its constant, quiet presence. Winds sweep across the valleys, changing direction with the seasons. Summer storms roll in with dark thunderheads that break over the land, releasing sheets of rain. In winter, the air turns sharp and clear, the sky polished to a deep blue. Yet through it all, the cloud remains, a soft guardian fixed above the summit. Meteorologists have studied it, noting that it does not behave like the lenticular clouds sometimes formed by mountains. It does not shift, stretch, or dissolve. It simply holds its place, as though anchored to the earth itself. From below, the cloud's whiteness contrasts against a changing sky, glowing gold at dawn, silver under midday sun, and pale rose in the evening light. Farmers working the fields glance at it without thought, as if reassured by a familiar outline. Travelers passing through often stop to photograph it, puzzled by its stillness. Local legends offer different explanations. Some say the cloud is the breath of a sleeping giant lying beneath the mountain. Others believe it marks the resting place of an ancient leader, watching over the land from above. A few tell of a time when the cloud briefly vanished, only to return days later, and the people took it as a sign. that it had gone somewhere far away before choosing to come back. Climbing the mountain brings no closer understanding. At the summit, the air is clear, the wind constant, but the cloud drifts just above, unreachable, its edges bright against the sun. It is a reminder that not all guardians move, and not all mysteries are meant to be tasted. Some simply remain, watching, as the world changes beneath them. In a quiet corner of Poland, hidden away from the main roads, there's a grove unlike any other. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary stand of pines, tall, straight, and green against the sky. But as you step between them, the strangeness reveals itself. Every tree, without exception, bends sharply near its base, curving low to the ground before rising again in a perfect vertical line. The bend is smooth, as if shaped deliberately, each trunk leaning in the same direction as though all had once bowed to the same unseen force. The forest floor is soft underfoot, carpeted with a thick layer of fallen needles that mute every step. The air is cool and carries a scent of resin and the memory of rain, even on dry days. Sunlight filters through the canopy in angled beams, catching on the curves of the trunks, making them look like frozen waves rolling across a sea of green. No one knows how the grove came to be this way. Some suggest the trees were bent intentionally when young, perhaps for use in shipbuilding or furniture making, though no records exist to support the theory. Others point to storms or heavy snowfalls, yet the uniformity of the bends, all the same height, all the same angle, resists such explanations. There are whispers, too, of older stories, of the trees bending to follow a light that passed through the forest long ago, or bowing in unison to something that moved above them. Standing among them, it is hard not to feel the pull of their silent choreography. The bends give the grove a strange sense of motion, as if the trees are still in the act of turning, caught in a moment that stretches across decades. In the hush of the air, you can almost believe they are listening for the return of whatever once made them lean, waiting in their patient, resin-scented stillness for the signal to rise straight again. High in the Alps, where the wind moves like a steady breath over snow-capped peaks and the air carries a faint tang of pine and stone, there stands a monastery built into the mountainside. Its walls are thick with age, its bells weathered by centuries of ringing over the valleys below. Inside its chapel, past carved wooden pews and an altar polished by generations of hands, there is a single candle that has burned without pause for more than 200 years. The flame is small but steady, its glow warm against the cool air of the chapel. Even when the high doors swing open and mountain drafts slip through, the flame does not flicker or lean. The wax, pale and unblemished, never melts enough to drip. It remains cool to the touch, smooth as if newly made, no shorter now than in the earliest records of its presence. Monks keep no barriers around it, only a quiet respect. They say it has been here longer than any of them, longer even than some of the walls that shelter it. Pilgrims climb the winding paths from far away to see it, some seeking a miracle, others simply curious. They kneel before it in the hush, watching its light, as if expecting it to speak in the soft language of flame. Scholars and scientists have visited, bringing instruments to measure heat, fuel consumption, airflow. None have found a reason why it should not have burned itself away centuries ago. The wax shows no sign of replenishment, the wick no evidence of replacement. Some say it is an act of divine intervention. Others believe it is a relic from a forgotten age of craftsmanship, made with knowledge now lost. In the evenings, when the chapel is lit only by its glow, the candle seems brighter, casting shadows that sway gently across the stone floor. The monks do not speak of it often, perhaps because they do not wish to define it. For them, it is not a puzzle to be solved, but a quiet, living presence, a light that endures beyond the reach of time, steady as the mountains themselves. In the walled garden of an old English estate, where gravel paths wind between clipped hedges and roses climb over weathered arches, there stands a statue carved from pale limestone. It is a figure of a robed woman, her hands folded at her waist, her face turned slightly to one side. She has been here for as long as the gardeners remember, her base set deep into the earth, surrounded by lavender and foxglove. At first glance, nothing about her seems unusual. The stone bears a gentle wear of age, softened edges, faint lichen along the fold of her robe, but her form is whole, her details clear. Yet photographs taken over the years have revealed something strange. The statue's position changes, slowly but unmistakably. A decade ago, she faced the central fountain. Now her gaze tilts toward the far hedgerow, as if tracking something beyond the garden wall. The shifts are too gradual to notice in daily life. Only by comparing images month apart does the change become undeniable. Gardeners insist they have never moved her. The base shows no marks of lifting or turning, and the soil around it remains undisturbed. Moss grows differently on each side, changing as though she alters her position to follow or avoid the light. Visitors sometimes linger near her, claiming they feel watched, not in the unsettling sense of being spied upon, but as if she is quietly aware of their presence. Some believe she is turning toward the horizon to meet someone who has yet to arrive. Others suggest she is turning away, retreating inch by inch from whatever lies in the direction she once faced. In the early mornings, when the mist clings low to the grass and the first sunlight falls over the garden, her pale stone catches the light in a way that makes her seem newly set in place. Yet for those who have traced her long, slow movement, there is the inescapable sense that she is on a journey, one so patient and deliberate that only the passing of years will reveal where she is going and why she needs to face it. Across the vast Mongolian steppe, where the land rolls away in long, golden waves and the wind carries the scent of grass and dust, the sky is an unbroken ocean of blue. Clouds wander freely here, forming and dissolving as they please, except for once in a great while, when something stranger takes their place. Every 10 years, so the shepherds say, a perfect circle opens in the sky. It is not a gap in the clouds, the rest of the heavens can be clear, but a round patch, sharper than the edge of the moon, where the color shifts. In this circle, the sky turns almost translucent, and beyond it, faint stars can be seen even under the full glare of the midday sun. It lasts for hours, fixed in its place as the earth spins beneath it. Clouds skirt its edge but never cross its boundary. The wind grows still beneath it, and the air takes on peculiar lightness, as if breathing requires no effort. Shepherds have brought their herd beneath the circle and watched the animals grow calm, standing motionless, their ears twitching as though listening to something too high for human hearing. Those who have stood there speak of a strange stillness in their bodies, a sensation that is not quite weightlessness but feels like being gently lifted from within. Some say it makes the heart feel slow and deep, as though the world's usual pull has eased. No photograph has ever captured the stars visible through it, though many have tried. Cameras show only the plain blue of daylight. Astronomers, intrigued by the stories, have come with telescopes and instruments, but the phenomenon appears without warning, and only to those who are already here to see it. When the circle finally fades, it does so without ripple or warning, simply closing until the sky is seamless once more. The shepherds, unhurried and without ceremony, return to their herding, but in their eyes there lingers a memory of standing beneath an open place in the heavens, as if for a short time the earth itself had looked up and met the gaze of the stars. At the edge of the map, not the paper one folded in a drawer, but the map each of us carries in our mind, there is a place where all the roads of wonder meet. It cannot be found by compass or measured in miles, yet every traveler of the strange seems to arrive here in time. It is not a single landscape, but a merging of them all. The hush of deserts where footprints last for centuries blends with the cool salt breath of mid-ocean. The stone hush of mountain passes leans into the green weight of deep forests. The dim glow beneath ice joins with a drifting fire of lanterns over still bays. The air here is thick with the scent of rain that has not yet fallen, and the ground beneath feels steady, though it belongs to no one land. Here, the questions gather. The bells beneath the sea, the bridges in the fog, the circles of stone on the ocean floor, all stand side by side, unjostled, as though each mystery knows the others and has always known them. They do not speak, yet the silence between them is warm. It is the silence of things that have endured every telling and remained themselves. You realize that answers, if they exist, are not what hold these places together. It is the not knowing that binds them, a gentle thread woven through centuries, pulling the curious and the patient toward this quiet convergence. There is no sense of urgency here. Time feels stretched, as if the minutes have learned to slow in reverence. Looking up, the sky is both day and night. Stars hang faintly even in the blue, while a low sun lays gold across the water so still it might be glass. It reflects a world above with such clarity that it's impossible to say where reflection ends and reality begins. Standing here, you feel the mind loosen its grip on the need to solve. You remember the sound of footsteps fading on a vanished road, the glow beneath a glacier's skin, the weightless air beneath a circle in the sky. These are not puzzles to be conquered but companions to be kept, constellations of wonder scattered through the world. In this place, you understand that the unknown is not an absence. It is a presence, full, patient, and alive. And as you turn to leave, carrying its stillness within you, the mysteries do not close behind. They remain, waiting in their own time, watching over deserts and oceans and skies, just as stars watch over still water. The river moves without hurry, curling through the green heart of the land like a length of dark silk. Its surface is calm, carrying the slow reflections of palms, bamboo, and the pale shape of the sky. It is a river of ordinary days, of children bathing in the shallows, of women rinsing baskets, of fishermen setting out at dawn. Yet sometimes, without warning, it becomes a river of absence. A boat appears around a bend, drifting as if guided by an invisible hand. Inside, the nets are coiled neatly, the wooden oars resting where they were left, the small tins of bait still sealed. The seat is empty. The second seat is empty. The whole boat is empty, but there is no sign of panic, no splintered wood, no rope trailing in the water. The current here is so slow that a leaf might take hours to travel a mile. There are no rapids to tip a man into the depths, no known predators to pull him below. Yet those who vanish are never found, not clinging to the roots along the banks, not caught in the bends downstream. It is as though they step, mid-cast, into a space beyond the river's own reflection and never return. The elders speak of places where the water folds in on itself, whirlpools that are not made of water at all, but of something invisible, a spinning hollow in the air that rests on the river's skin. These are not marked on any map, yet the villagers know the signs. The silence of birds in the trees above, the sudden stillness of ripples, the way the sunlight seems to fade as if passing through a shadow. Some say the river has two currents, one you can see and one you cannot. The second is not made for boats, but for souls. It winds away under the roots and stones, beneath the bed of the world, carrying those it takes to a place that cannot be returned from. At dusk, the water turns the color of bruised copper. The hum of insects grows louder, as though the air is pressing them to speak. From the banks, you can see the small fishing boats moored for the night, bobbing gently as if in sleep. Yet for every boat tied there is a memory of another that never came back, its absence settling into the village like silt after flood. You walk away from the shore, but the river's gaze follows you. It does not threaten. It does not promise. It simply waits, patient as the roots of the trees, knowing that all currents, the seen and the unseen, eventually meet. The valley lies between two ridges that fold into each other like the pages of an unopened book. From above, it is almost invisible, just a crease in the green fabric of the land, veiled by mist that rises from hidden streams. Few who wander here come by accident, and those who do often feel they have stepped into a room the earth has been keeping to itself. Most days, the valley is a quiet place of moss and stone, its grass soft and unremarkable underfoot. Yet deep within the soil, an ancient rhythm beats in secret, a calendar written not in years but in lifetimes. For here grows a flower that the world almost forgets between its appearances, a bloom that comes only once for each generation. When the time comes, no season, no moon, no weather foretelling it, the valley transforms overnight. Thousands upon thousands of buds rise from the earth, their stalks trembling as if stirred by a wind no one can feel. By nightfall, the petals unfold, a silver so pure they seem to carry the moon's light within them. The ground becomes a mirror to the sky, each bloom catching and bending the pale glow into ripples of liquid brightness. Under the moonlight, the valley is neither night nor day, but a place in between, a silver tide frozen in mid-wave. Even the air changes, filled with a scent that is not quite floral, not quite mineral, but something of rain, stone, and a faint memory of fire. People who have stood among the blooms speak of feeling time loosen its grip, as though they are both very young and very old, as though every moment of their life is folded into this single one. Some kneel among the flowers, touching the petals as if they might dissolve, while others simply stand, afraid that even a breath might scatter them. By dawn, the silver sea begins to fade. The petals curl inward, their glow dimming like the embers of a long-burning flame. Within hours, the blooms are gone, leaving behind only the familiar moss and grass. No seed pods remain, no trace of the miracle except in the minds of those who saw it. The valley then returns to its patient stillness, holding its secret close for another lifetime. Botanists have studied the soil, the water, the air, yet none can explain the clock that governs the blooms. Some suggest an ancient cycle tied to the moon and tides, others to the slow drift of something deep within the Earth's crust. But in truth, no explanation feels large enough. The valley blooms because it chooses to, because the world still holds corners where time bends to beauty rather than urgency. And somewhere, perhaps far away, the earth has already begun counting again, toward the next night when silver will spill across the grass and the valley will open its hidden book once more. In the high Alps, where the air is so thin it tastes of ice, there lies a lake as still as a hell breath. It rests in a hollow carved by glacier, its water a deep, unbroken green. The surface mirrors the surrounding peak so perfectly that on windless days, the line between mountain and reflection vanishes, and it feels as though you could fall upward into the sky. Beneath that perfect surface, however, lies something the mountains themselves seem reluctant to speak of. Divers say the cold here is different, not just a bite of icy water, but a cold that feels older than weather, older than the rock it moves through. Visibility fades to a dim green haze, and sound becomes muffled, as if the world above no longer exists. And then, out of the dark, the first face appears. It is larger than a man, carved from the sheer cliff wall that drops into the depths. The features are calm, almost tender, lips closed in silence, eyes heavy-lidded as though watching in thought. But there is no sign of chisel marks, no weathering that speaks of centuries above water. The stone is smooth, as if it has always been here, untouched by hands, yet too deliberate to be an accident. Swim further, and more faces emerge. Some gaze downward, as though in mourning. Others look straight ahead, their eyes seeming to follow as you move past, pupils deepened by shadows. One tilts its head ever so slightly, as though listening for something through the cold. No two are alike, yet all share the same serenity. Not the peace of sleep, but the stillness of waiting. Local legends tell of a people who lived here before the mountains were split by ice, who carved their ancestors into the cliffs so they would always watch over the valley. When the glacier came, they say, the valley filled with meltwater, sealing the faces in their green tomb. The water is their sky now, and they breathe only through memory. Scientists, of course, find no record of such a people. The style of carving matches nothing in known history, not Celtic, not Roman, not any Alpine culture. Geological surveys confirm the faces are part of the living rock, not later additions. And yet, they are undeniably shaped with intention, each curve of cheek and brow too precise to be the work of chance. Some divers refuse to go back after their first ascent, speaking of an unease that grows the longer you linger, the sensation that the faces are not fixed in stone, that their eyes shift ever so slightly when you turn away. Others return again and again, drawn to that impossible calm, as if hoping to learn the secret behind those patient expressions. On the surface, the lake remains unchanged. Summer sun warms its shallows, winter ice locks it under white silence. The villagers go about their days, the mountains keep their counsel, and the water guards its gallery of watchers. If the faces are guardians, they are patient ones. If they are memories, they are carved in a language we no longer speak. And if they are something else entirely, something that looks back from the dark, then the lake will keep that truth until the mountains themselves are ready to tell it. Far out in the North Atlantic, where the sea is restless even in calm weather, a single rocky isle rises from the waves like the spine of something ancient. At its crown stands a lighthouse, tall, narrow, its white paint faded to the color of bone. The beam sweeps across the water in steady rhythm, carving light through fog and night, as it has done every evening for over 100 years. No one lives here. At least, no one is supposed to. The lighthouse was built in an age when every beam was tended by hand, wicks trimmed, lenses polished, fuel carried up the endless spiral of iron stays. Yet from the day it was lit, there has been no record of a keeper. Shipping logs show supply runs made every few months, crates of oil in the early days, then fuel canisters, ropes, spare lantern parts, and, in later years, sealed boxes of food and bottled water. The boats leave their cargo on the small dock below, turn back toward the mainland, and when they return, the dock is empty. Those who have stepped inside say the place is always immaculate. The brass fittings shine. The windows are spotless, salt-free, as if cleaned that morning. The air holds a faint tang of salt water and lamp oil, a scent as old as the sea lanes themselves. The logbook on the keeper's desk is blank, yet a pencil always rests across the open page. The lamp burns every night without fail. Even in the worst storms, when waves swallow the rocks, when wind howls like tearing canvas, the beam cuts through the black, unwavering. Mariners trust it without thinking. Generations of sailors have plotted their course by its light, passing without question that it stands alone. Legends cling to the place like barnacles. Some say the first keeper refused to leave, even in death, tending his lamp as a spirit bound to duty. Others whisper that the lighthouse is kept by the sea itself, the tides feeding it as they feed the currents and fish. Fishermen tell of passing the island at night and seeing a figure in the lantern room, a shadow behind glass, only for it to vanish as soon as the beam swings away. Once, decades ago, a curious crew decided to stay after delivering supplies. They moored their boat, climbed the wet iron ladder to the door, and kept watch. Hours passed. The sun sank. The lamp flared to life with a low hum. But no one had touched it. The spiral stays above were empty. The fuel stores were untouched. And yet, the light burned on, steady and silent. Some believe there's a passage beneath the lighthouse, a tunnel leading into the rock and down to the sea, where some hidden caretaker comes and goes unseen. Divers have searched the base, finding only kelp forests swaying in the current. No doors, no openings, no sign of any living soul. And so the light keeps turning, keeperless, tireless. Its beam sweeps the black water, marking the way home for those who know where to look. The dock still receives its supplies, the crates still vanish, and the records still show no one assigned to the post. On nights when the fog is thick and the wind stills, you might stand on the deck of a passing ship and hear, faintly, under the slow rhythm of the waves, the sound of footsteps high above, circling in time with the turning of the light. In the high deserts of Chile, where the air is thin and the horizon lies like a straight edge against the sky, there's a boulder unlike any other. From a distance, it seems ordinary, a rough, sun-baked stone, its surface bleached by decades of heat and wind. But those who have stood near it, alone in the wide silence, know the truth. When the wind passes over the desert, the stone sings. It begins as the faintest vibration, a hum so low it might be mistaken for the sound of your own heartbeat. Then, as the breeze gathers, the tone blooms into something richer, deep, resonant, harmonic, as if the earth itself is breathing out through the stone. In winter, the pitch is low and somber, like the sound of a great bell struck in the distance. In summer, it rises, becoming softer, brighter, a thread of melody that seems to shimmer in the heat. Locals say the stone is older than the desert itself, pushed here by forces no one remembers. Some claim it was once part of a mountain far to the north, torn free and carried here in the age before names. Others believe it fell from the sky, not as fire, but as music made solid. Scientists who have studied it find no machinery, no hollow spaces to act as an instrument. Yet its surface bears strange grooves and lines, some natural, some seemingly carved, as if something or someone once tuned it. Sound recorders capture the notes, but never the full depth. There's always something missing, a layer the ear feels more than hears. Travelers describe the effect as hypnotic. You stand beside it, meaning to listen for a moment, and time begins to blur. Shadows lengthen, the sun shifts, and still you stand there, held by the music. It's not a song in a human sense. There is no rhythm, no chorus, but something older, patient, like the turning of the seasons or the slow pull of the moon on the tides. At night, when the desert cools and the stars emerge in impossible numbers, the wind changes. It flows down from the mountains in long, cold breaths, and the stone answers in tones so low they seem to sink into the ground. Those who camp nearby say the hum seeps into their dreams, carrying them into landscapes of endless sky and shifting sand. Some wake with tears on their faces, unable to say why. No one knows when it began. The oldest stories of the region speak of a singing rock that guided nomads across the plateau, its voice a landmark in the empty miles. And no one knows if it will stop. The desert changes slowly, but it does change. Winds alter their paths. Sand buries what was once open. One day, perhaps, the stone's voice will fall silent, and only the memory of its song will remain. For now, it sings on. The wind arrives, curious as always, and the stone answers in the only language it knows, a voice without words, a melody without end, a music too slow for the world to measure.